Hello, and welcome again to Talking Baseball with Leon Lee. It is September 4th, 2018, and we're here again in sunny and warm Sacramento, California. I'm here again with Leon Lee and Eddie Cervantes. How you guys doing today?
Doing great, Steve. Doing great.
I'm doing good, Steve. Good to be here.
All right, and today I know we wanted to start talking a little bit about the unwritten rules of baseball. So guys, this is kind of a big subject. There's a lot of things over the decades that have been argued about and debated about from the different generations. And where would you guys like to start off with tonight?
Well, Steve, me and Eddie talk a lot about baseball. We're old timers. I know we stress a lot on this podcast. We talk about the old school and then the new school, and sometimes there's always that good meeting ground in the middle. But what we talk about is what we know and what we understand. And nowadays, and I watch travel ball, and we talk about the unwritten rules and part of the style of play in travel ball. For example, there's probably 8 or 10 of these things that we're going to talk about today in the unwritten rules. But for example, in travel ball, they will allow a team to run up a score on a Saturday in order to get a better seating on Sunday. Now, we talk about it in pro ball. In the old days, if a team start running up the score, somebody was going to get hit by a baseball. And this is some of the things that we want to discuss, some of the unwritten rules that kids aren't understanding today, they're not seeing because pitchers aren't really allowed to pitch inside. They're protecting the hitter a lot. Back in our day, as we all keep saying, the knockdown pitch was real prominent. And I led a lot of leagues in getting hit by pitches simply because of situations. So I think it's a great conversation. I think kids and parents, sometimes it's fun to hear some of the stories about what we call the unwritten rules, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
So do you think those unwritten rules should be the same for a lot of the youth levels that they are at the professional level?
Well, I think the kids that are, as we say, a very small percentage of kids are actually going to go play pro ball. We know that. But the message is more for them because we're talking about where they're going, not where they are, and having an education ahead of time of what they're going to look forward to, and understanding that there's a kind of a standard of play that you don't show up players on the other team. And I think kids are a little bit different now. They pay, they play, they don't get cut. They expect certain things to happen. Come on, pitcher, throw the ball right down the middle so I can hit it. I mean, they want everything kids are kind of in that tendency to want things kind of given to them on a platter. Well, some of our discussion is a little contradictory to that. And, where if you stand up at the home plate and start digging in, for example, you're going to get knocked down. And, I would like to see a 10-year-old pitcher do that sometimes, to be honest.
Eddie?
How do I follow that up?
Throw at him.
I think there's definitely a fine line between the younger kids and pro ball, in the sense that I think the kids need to have that input. They need to have that learning experience on how the game should be played and or can be played with respect and not so much consideration to, but there's a fine line there. And here's the fine line. Do you hold back so much after 15 runs that now you make the other team feel like you're being so gracious out there on the field by you hit one to the wall and you stop at first type of thing? Now you're so there's and I think it kind of even got into the rules, the written rules in high school with and they have them in the tournaments with all the run rules. After 5 innings in a 7-inning game,
Is
4.5
that the 10
innings.
run rule?
The 10-run rule.
Okay.
They call it the mercy rule. And now what kind of message does that send to? So in other words, the fine line between a team that is clearly much better on that given day than the other team and just kind of controls his game and not plays as aggressive compared to laying back to you're saying how we feel sorry for you, and so it's I think there's a kind of something you have to be careful with on how you handle it.
But it also depends too, Steve, on and Eddie, how the other team reacts. If a team is just on a roll and they're scoring runs, and you say, okay, where is the stop point? Well, if the other team keeps playing, then you show a certain amount of respect. But to me, if the other team quits,
well, that's yeah.
If the other team quits, you just got to keep playing the game and beat them. I mean, I understand, but to me, there's no mercy in quitting. And if a lot of times you see a team will quit on the field and the players just start going through the motions. Well, if they're laying to get beat like that, you just have to go ahead and beat them like that. But if a team is still really working hard and they're really competing and you're just better to them that day, then I think there's a back off point.
Sure. We're kind of talking about maybe respect for the game versus sportsmanship, or.
Well, I think that is sportsmanship.
I think it's both.
That's
it's sportsmanship and
definitely.
Respect for the game. I think because there's certain, I remember years ago, we were playing a game at William Land Park, and I asked Eddie about this because he was an umpire. And one of our players hit a line drive over the second baseman's head. And the second baseman took his glove off his hand and he threw his glove up at the ball. But the ball missed his glove, and the umpire called interference. It was kind of interference, but the runner didn't get it. And for me, as a professional, I said, that's a travesty of the game. And the reason I tell that story is because there is a term that applies to sports in general, amateur and professional, that once a team, if they have a player or a team that's making a travesty of the game, there should be some penalty involved in it because there's a certain amount of respect. Now they said if the ball had to hit the glove,
no, it's enforceable.
It's enforceable. Mm-hmm. But since it didn't hit the glove, there's no enforcement on it. There's nothing you can do about it. And so there's a certain standard, I think, what we need to teach kids today. For example, in our day, a batter gets in a batter's box and he puts his hand up. He starts digging a hole in the back foot to get a good grip. Well, in our day, a guy like Bob Gibson or Don Drysdale, you're going to get knocked right out of that hole. That's one of the unwritten rules. Or if you hit a home run and you stand there and stare at it, or how some of the kids that do now, even at the big league level, they flip their bat in the air and take off and run around and
there's a lot of controversy about that because some of the fans these days, or even some of the media, like to see that flair or that type of activity. They think the bat flips and the theatrics are okay. Some of the maybe older generation don't like that. Even some of today's generation don't like it either. So there's a lot of controversy between that.
Well, there's a difference between competition and entertainment. The fans come to be entertained. Right. They love that manager running out, yelling and screaming at an umpire. But he's defending his team. He's out there for a purpose. But to the fan, it's entertainment. Flipping a bat in the air, if they look at it as entertainment, okay. But then the next entertainment is the next time he comes up, he gets one in his ear. Because you're kind of showing that picture up. So it's kind of a combination. Competition is entertainment. People pay their money because they want to see competition. The entertainment part, obviously, is a category it falls under because sports falls under the category of entertainment. But it's still competition. And in our day, when we talk about the old days and old school, and people say, oh, the young kids, you guys are old, that was back in the day and so forth, doesn't really apply to us. But in a way it does, because there are certain areas of competition that there has to be a certain amount of respect between those teams.
Exactly. Now how about, when you're speaking of that, you're talking about the entertainment of the game. Well, where is that entertainment supposed to occur? In between the lines with how the game is played. Flipping the bat is just an afterthought on what occurred in a dead ball situation. The ball's out of the park. Ball's dead. Nobody's playing the game now at this point. All he's going to do is round the bases and score. But he is to the fans, I bet you if you asked half the fans would say, well, I could deal without that. I enjoyed the home run. I don't need the bat flip. And then, and half might go, no, I like that. I thought that was great that he did that. And so there's a give and take there. But that's part of the old and the new that's kind of come. At what point do you draw the line on that? Almost like football, they've made changes to the celebrating on touchdowns, and I'll tell you, this is where it started in the lower leagues. In high school ball, having umpired at that level, I found that we were, instead of just arbitrating the game, they turned us into policemen. We had to enforce all these conduct rules because more and more the kids didn't know how to handle a kid sliding in hard at second base on a double play, a kid getting brushed back at the plate, and maybe because the pitch got away, now it hits him. A kid in their eyes disrespecting and flipping the bat. Now it turned into, they couldn't handle that type of thing the way we did. For example, a ball hit to the shortstop when we were younger, and he boots it, and the runner gets on. Well, somebody in the dugout might, when the next batter comes up, he might just pop off and say, hey, hit it to the shortstop. And the shortstop, what's he going to do? He's going to get mad. And no, what you did was, I'll show them. Yeah, hit it to me. And now I'll turn to, or whatever the situation is. But you had to have thick skin back then. And it got to a point where the kids' skin got thinner and thinner and thinner. And you started having confrontation. And so to eliminate the confrontation out on the field with kids getting in each other's face, you had to institute the rules that the umpires had to enforce as far as conduct. You can't do certain things. You can't say things that refer to anybody on the other team, either by position or number or name. It had to be all within your own team. And so that's how it's gone up even into the big leagues, to where we're watching the MLB, Major League Baseball, is trying to control all that because there have been some pushbacks, players getting in each other's face, and it happened in the beanball wars, didn't it?
Yeah.
What years were those?
Oh man, back in the
60s,
60s and 70s and into the 80s, and during our era, that was exactly what it was. A beanball war. It was when it started. It didn't stop. But it was that day.
And that was it.
And there's another unwritten rule. You see in the big leagues where you see players throwing at players today for something that happened months ago or even the year before.
Yeah.
See, the one way we monitored it, the umpires understood it very well in our day, was if there was something that you had to clear up that day, it was that day. You settled it that game. And if it didn't get settled that game, it was over. Too bad. You get them today. Otherwise, it's like, okay, let's start over the next day.
Yeah, let's move on.
Now, you could be a little bit antsy and say, okay, that next game, we might send a message. But for the most part, and even if you talk to some of the real seasoned, aggressive pitchers at the big league level, Bob Gibson and Don Drysdale, Bob almost had his name, but wear the big Coke bottle glasses for Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name, but he would throw at you in a minute. And sometimes he was legally blind, and sometimes when the guys
Ryan Duran, the Phillies
had it like that. But when almost had his name, but he would literally call the trainer out of the dugout, and the trainer would come out on the field, and he'd take his big Coke bottle glasses off and hand it to him. Mm-hmm. And everybody on the other ball club knew he was legally blind.
He didn't know where he was going to throw it.
There's no rule against it, right?
Yeah.
So I had no idea where it was going.
Well, you keep mentioning Bob Gibson, Leon.
Well, I love Bob Gibson.
And I've got a story on that. During those years, and it was after the fact, there was a news article in the sports, and Chuck Estrada, pitcher with the Mets, and he played with various teams, but they were interviewing him about when he was with the Mets, and it was after the Beanball, where the article was about the Beanball Wars and what have you, and he told the story about when Tom Seaver first came to the big leagues. It was in the late '60s with the Mets, and they were playing the St. Louis Cardinals, and Bob Gibson's on the mound, Tom Seaver's on the mound for the Mets. First time Tom Seaver comes up to the plate, Bob Gibson, he plunks him, I think, around the waist somewhere in the butt or something, and on his way down to first base, Tom Seaver peeks out at the mound, and Gibson's staring him down, and he goes, "Welcome to the big leagues." So now Bob Gibson, he comes up to the plate. Tom Seaver proceeds to plunk him. And on his way, Bob Gibson's on his way to first base, and he looks out at the mound. Tom Seaver's staring him down. He goes, "It's good to be here." So that's the lighter side of how that was handled back then.
Exactly.
And it wasn't, but now it's gotten into malicious stuff.
Malicious, yeah. It's too malicious.
It's more out of anger.
It's out of, you don't have to be angry to compete.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to teach young kids now. When if it was my best buddy or a family member on the field, we would compete. When I was in AAA with the Cardinals, we had a guy, Scipio Spinks, that got traded over to the Cubs organization, and we were playing against him, and we had lunch together that night. He threw one right at my head, addressed me and everything, and said, just because we're friends don't mean I could jump up on top of home plate on him. He got his message across, and I understood it. And it didn't make me angry, but because he did the right thing. And I've told pitchers, there's times when the reason they have good stuff and they're getting hit because the hitter knows they're afraid to pitch in. They're afraid to hit a batter. And you don't have to hit a batter to get across, but you still have to let that hitter know that you're not afraid to throw in there. And the young players that are coming up today, they think they're going to get in trouble, or if there's a taboo thing, if they knock somebody down because that guy might get mad at them or something. And you have to be able, you don't have to be tough. We always talk about athletes or baseball players being tough. You just have to have a passion for the game. But the players are perceiving it to be, the coaches and parents are saying, you have to be tough, toughen up. Well, the kids that aren't inherently tough are now trying to fake it. So now here's an unwritten rule. So here's a situation where a kid just showed me up, whatever, and all of a sudden he wants to act tough, he wants to see tough, but the toughness is not there. So he's been throwing 90 mile an hour on the outer side of the plate and says, oh man, if I don't throw into this hitter, somebody's going to think bad of me. So they throw this 85 mile an hour fastball on the inner part of the plate. And every hitter in baseball knows if you're throwing 90 mile an hour outside and you're throwing 85 inside, that you don't want to hit them. So you may as well not even throw it in there.
That's right.
Am I right?
Well, plus you have these pitchers, and I've seen it. I've seen pitchers where they throw it inside and the guy hits a line drive foul, and after that, they do not come back inside.
No,
they're afraid to come back. They're afraid to re-challenge and they lose their confidence. But how about all the other unwritten stuff, which are kind of basic to the game? You got the automatic 3-0 take. And that was something that was done, without thought. Sure, there were coaches that had to give the take sign even in that situation. But nowadays, and I know Leon believes in this, especially in the instruction part of the game, when we're talking in an academy setting where we're not playing for any particular trophies or league championships or anything, but you want kids to be able to take advantage sometimes of that 3-0 situation. And it's gotten to the point that even into pro ball where you got, and you probably experienced this in Japan, in Mexico, I wasn't seeing a whole lot of 3-0 fastballs in pro ball down there. You're getting change-ups and curveballs on a 3-0 pitch, and you're seeing that in the big leagues a lot these days. And so, that unwritten rule that's kind of the old school, and it's still kind of prevalent depending on the hitters, but it has changed a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the nowadays.
You see bigger hitters in America now, especially early in the game. They're getting the green light 3-0, but there's other ones like don't ever make the third out at or third out at
first or third out at third base.
At third base, or if you think about it, if you're a runner at second, there's a whole lot of ways that you could still go to third base, even with 2 outs, or take advantage of situations that you can go to third. To me, if you play the game without fear, there's certain standards, certain things that players now can take advantage of, and we have story after story of players. Let's go down the list. Ricky Henderson. Could you tell Ricky Henderson don't make the third out at third base or first out? You can't cut their motor off. There's exceptions to all those rules. Deion Sanders. If you look at guys like Hank Aaron, would usually always take a 3-0 pitch. But if you look at guys like Vladimir Guerrero, and I could probably name a whole lot more, that would swing 4-0. They swung at everything.
Ball 4.
And it just, the individual hitter a lot of times dictates. So you just can't say 3-0 automatic take.
Yeah, I think that the situation dictates too.
Situation dictates.
You got runners on us
dictate.
late in the game, and you got a 3-0 count, and you're still looking to drive the ball. Maybe that's the best pitch to do it on.
Yeah. But I saw one case with a AAA game when I was doing radio. The pitcher had thrown 12 straight balls. And a 3-0 count, and they were down by a run. Bases were loaded. And 2 outs with a 3-0 count, and the pitcher had thrown had walked 3 straight hitters.
Yeah.
And he swung at 3-0 on a high fastball
Yes.
out of the zone.
Yeah,
That's just common sense.
That's common sense.
12 pitches in a row balls. You got to take that.
Again, to me, the situation dictates what you should do.
Exactly.
If you read the situation and understand the game, that'll dictate,
Absolutely.
and that'll eliminate a lot of these unwritten rules.
Exactly. Well, and going back to that first and third out, you never make that first and third out at third. It kind of goes back to what Leon and what we talk about and teach the kids about intelligent base running, making good decisions when you're running the bases. If you are an intelligent, smart base runner, you're not going to make a dumb mistake like that unless it's just bang, bang. If it's bang, bang and you're out, hey, you know what? There isn't a coach around, I don't think, is going to say anything about that. And like you said, if you're a name runner too, it's not going to hurt. But
you got a Juan Pierre in center field and 2 outs, and there's a base hit, and he can't throw a ball from here to the wall.
yeah.
And I'm sorry, Juan, I know you well. I love you to death. If you hear this podcast, you know you couldn't throw. But why not go first to third? Don't hold up a second when you know a certain player can't throw you out. There's certain exceptions.
Situations, yeah.
Yeah.
Situations.
I mean, I wouldn't run to third on Ichiro Suzuki if it was 1 out.
Right.
Right. Why make the second out when you know he's got a cannon? The guy's got a cannon for an arm. But
here's another one that sometimes gets me is when somebody's throwing a no-hitter and a guy late in the game bunts it. Now a lot of people get upset at that, but again, to me, what's the situation? Is it 1-0 or is it 9-0 in the 8th inning? I mean, if it's 1-0, you're still trying to win a ball game, and a base runner can make all the difference.
If it's 9-0 and you're just trying to, that's your sole purpose, is trying to break up that no-hitter, you're going to lose respect as a hitter.
Right, you're going to lose respect. That's not respecting the game. But what if it's 1-0?
If it's 1-0, I'm saying, hey, you know what? We haven't been able to hit you all game, and so maybe getting on base, we need a base runner.
I tell my guy to try to put one down if he can run a little bit.
Yeah.
Not only not to break up the no hitter, but we need a base runner. Yeah, we need a base runner.
Thank you. Yeah.
And but I thought also in a situation where a pitcher's pitching a no-hitter. There's that one that the guys in the dugout is not supposed to tell the pitcher he's throwing a no-hitter because that jinxes him, right? And the same one where we say it gets in the 8th inning and the game is an hour and a half long. We go, wow, this game is going fast.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
That's like the jinx.
yes, the jinx goes
stuff,
on.
yeah.
So the next inning takes an hour and a half. You know, but it's certain things that in the game, it's like some pitchers and some players believe. We're getting into superstitions now, but they're still kind of applicable to our conversation because sometimes running on and off the field, some guys don't believe in stepping on the baseline.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are
exactly.
prominent ones, that we see in the game. But they're interesting conversations, and but kind of winding it down, Steve. What you got? Anything else to add to that?
Not just the fact that we're moving into a different era of baseball, and some of these things, there are things that are changing a little bit, and it doesn't mean it's totally bad. I don't think. I think with some of these, it's shutting down your offense when you got a big lead. You're not shutting it down completely because, on the other hand, you want to give that other team, you want to give that team respect by saying, you know what, hey, you're still got to play the game. So play the game. We're not going to if we shut it down, now we're not respecting you. But we still play the game so that you guys can still go out there and make the plays and kind of save face, if you will, if you want to call it that. Just kind of, so that they can still have a chance to make that diving play or run one down out in the outfield, or even on offense for them to, that's part of the game. If you can't handle getting beat up during a game once in a while, then maybe you're not a competitive player.
Right, but the bottom line is you still, no matter what, you still got to play the game.
Exactly.
I just think that some of the technology and the things that are what we're talking about, the instincts and the unwritten rules and some of the old styles. I mean, I know I'm a little resistant to a lot of the changes they're making, the 4-ball thing, put 4 fingers up.
Yeah.
I still think the game should be played. I don't think it should be rushed. I don't think you should try to speed a ball game up. I think a game will speed itself up if it's played properly.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah.
I think if the pitchers go out and throw strikes, the best pitch in baseball is still strike one. Mm-hmm. And if the base runners that are on base, if catchers would not look in the dugout a lot and just put the sign down and get the pitcher in a rhythm, I still believe that a pitcher with the fast tempo can win ball games. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of the old school ways that if implemented and played will still speed the game up without them having to go through all the technology to do so.
I saw a game the other night. The Giants were playing. I turned it on. It was in the top of the 9th inning, and when the game start times are. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the clock on the TV, and they were 2 hours and 20 minutes into the game, and it was the top of the 9th inning. And so I watched that last inning, and the umpire, and they had the box, the strike zone box there. And that umpire, there must have been 8 out of 10 pitches were on the outside of the box, and he was calling strikes. They weren't on the inside part. Mm-hmm. They were on the outside part, all around it, and he was calling them strikes. And you get the umpires calling pitches, calling them strikes, and pitchers not afraid to throw in the zone, you're going to get quicker games.
You're going to get quicker games. There's a lot of ways to do it, and I think that's one of them. I mean, playing in Japan, a pitch on the outer part of the plate or black or off the black a little bit was almost like a pitch down the middle to us because the strike zones were just inherently a little bit wider. And I think we should teach the hitters how to hit wider zones.
What were we told?
Pitchers are still going to make mistakes.
We were told, hey, with 2 strikes, you protect the plate.
Protect the plate. That's right.
Don't be an umpire.
Oh, man.
Well, that's right, guys. Well, we probably could talk a little bit more about these unwritten rules. It always strikes up a lot of good conversation, but we'll probably call this one done for today. And let me remind everybody that the podcast site is talkingbaseballwithleonlee.podbean.com. And the email for questions and comments is talkingbaseballwithleonlee@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you all again soon.